In this video, we are talking all about exit strategies. So whether you are a landlord or a flipper or whatever you're doing with real estate, this is going to talk about all of them. So be sure to watch all the way till the end. What's up, everybody? It's Cassandra Lopez with the Bremerton Broker channel. If you're new to the channel, you're going to want to go ahead and subscribe. This channel is all about creative investment strategies. So whether you inherited a property that's in a really poor condition as a probate situation and you can't sell it through conventional means, maybe you bought a house 6 months ago and now you're getting divorced and you have zero equity and you need to sell it anyway, or maybe you're just tired of being a landlord, this channel is going to be for you. So be sure to subscribe, tap that little bell so you're notified, and reach out to me if there's anything that I can do to support you. This is my cell phone and my email. Investment strategies, exit strategies, right? So we've been talking about how to purchase properties kind of on the channel, right? In other videos, we talked about a sub 2, talked about seller financing, talked about a lease option, talked about agreement for sale, talked about. So today's video, we're going to talk about what to do when you've already acquired it and you need to sell it or dispose of it, or in the industry, it's called disposition. Acquisitions and disposition sounds all fancy. Sounds like you know what you're talking about, right? Okay, so the first one is the BRRRR method. Follow bigger pockets. I'm sure you've heard of this. So it's buy, rehab, refinance, and repeat. So basically you're forcing appreciation and you're forcing equity onto a property by improving it. That's the rehab part. And then once it's all rehabbed, you rent it out. And then once it's rented out and you have steady income and your tenant's paying your mortgage for you, you do a refi. And the idea is to do a cash out refi. So now you pull that equity that you just forced into that property out. And by the way, when you do that, it's tax-free. So it's like tax-free income. It's pretty cool. And then you use that money that you just pulled out of that cash out refi to repeat. And you go buy another property and you rehab it and you rent it and you refi and you repeat. So I just did this with one of my investment properties. It was a project, it needed some work. So I didn't know how much work it needed until the tenant moved out, because I inherited a tenant. So once she moved out, I was able to do a walkthrough with no furniture, nobody there. And it just needed a lot more work than I initially thought. So instead of just giving it a coat of paint and new carpet, I was like, you know what, we're just gonna do this whole thing. Like, we're gonna do all or nothing. I'm not gonna do, these little things that are gonna be new and shiny and stand out. And then it's still got like 1981 cabinets. I just didn't feel right. So I redid everything, new cabinets, flooring, counters, vanities, paint, all the things, right? Even the doors, cleaned out the fireplace, did all the things, put a new carpet. Really made this property nice and shiny. And through the process, it was fun. I learned a lot, but it really gave me this sense of pride. Like, I'm improving this property that I'm going to rent out, and the person who's going to get to live here is going to have this nice, bright, shiny new, like the appliances haven't even been used, you guys. It's got a whole new appliance set. Then they're going to turn on the oven for the first time. And it's going to have that like first use oven smell, like something's burning. Like, how cool is that, right? They get to like experience all this nice shiny newness. So they're going to feel good about living there. I improve the neighborhood. So that's cool. It makes the neighborhood nice and shiny. And it just felt really, really good. So if this is something you haven't done before, like, I encourage everyone to try this, because it's kind of cool. So even though you're not technically selling the property, you're refinancing and going and buying another property, the BRRRR method is still considered an exit strategy, because you have to know what you're going to do with your property. And you can always change that later. Of course, you can change your mind and sell it down the road. My goal with this particular unit that I bought is, I bought it this year, so my interest rate's like 7 1/8. It's not pretty, you guys. But with a tenant in there, it's still going to cash flow. And next year, when rates improve, I will look into refinancing it or selling it at that point. I'll hold it for at least a year and a day. So, I haven't made up my mind what my ultimate exit strategy is on that one is yet right now, but for now, I'm just going to keep it rented. Okay, the next exit strategy is flip, a traditional flip. So you buy a house, you fix it up, and then you sell it. That's a flip. I have a client that this is all he does. He does a really, really good job. He takes like 1.5 years or 2 years to do his flips. So he's definitely not speedy. He doesn't do this for his main source of income. Otherwise he'd be broke. So but he's one of those that's very, very meticulous, likes to take his time. Everything goes through the permitting process. Everything is done correctly, very high level of integrity. And I really enjoy working with people like that. So his products always come out really, really nice. And then when he goes to sell them, there's multiple offers and it gets bid up and everything, because everybody can see the quality of the work that went into it. It's really, really apparent when you go into a house that was like literally lipstick on a pig, and then you go into one of these houses where you know, it was thoughtfully designed and renovated, and it looks great. Lots of extras, like he'll throw all the appliances in there and all that stuff. Like a lot of times new construction, every house won't come with a fridge or a washer dryer. He provides all that stuff. So it's just like those little extras that really make it stand out. One thing to be mindful about flips is the capital gains tax. So I'm not a CPA. You're going to want to run this by your financial planner and your tax guy. But essentially, if you haven't lived in a property in the last 2 out of the last 5 years, you are going to be subject to capital gains tax, unless you do so much flipping that like the homes are like your inventory and there's other rules for that. We're not talking about that. We're just doing like, say we're doing 3 or 4 flips a year, right? And we make $100,000 on those flips. So the capital gains tax is factored into that $100,000. So depending on depreciation and expenses and all the things that your CPA is going to do, they may determine you owe X amount in capital gains. So there's a workaround to that, which is a 1031 exchange. And what that is you take the proceeds from your flipped property A and you use those proceeds to buy another like-kind property. So like say another single family or another multifamily or whatever it is. And you purchase that property with those proceeds, and you thereby have deferred your due payment on those capital gains for that tax year. And you can do this over and over until you die and just never ever pay capital gains. And some people do that. Okay, the next exit strategy is a buy and hold, which again is not like you're not disposing of the property, you're holding it for long term. So this is really popular among like the multifamilies. Like I own a duplex and I have no intention on ever selling it. So I have long-term tenants in there and they are great. They've been fantastic. They're super quiet. They take care of the property. I think it's a very symbiotic relationship. And I have no intention on selling because this is going to be where I make my money on the equity and the appreciation, just by virtue of owning property and what the market is doing. I'm not cash flowing a whole lot on those. I'm positive, so that's good. But, you know, my goal for these is appreciation. So there's lots of ways to buy and hold. You could do long-term rentals like I do. You could do midterm rentals, or you could do short-term rentals. So midterms are going to be like for the professionals moving in and out of an area for a short time. Traveling nurses is a big one. Road construction is a big one. That kind of thing. So these corporate gigs that are just in for a while. So here in Kitsap County, we have the only nuke refit facility on the West Coast for the shipyard and the US Navy. So we get a lot of temporary guys here from San Diego, from Norfolk, from Japan, and they're not here for a long time. So they're not going to sign a 1-year lease. They're certainly not going to buy a house. So they need somewhere to stay too. The midterm rental market here in Kitsap County is super duper solid because of that reason. Short terms, that market here is getting a little saturated, but there are still some amazing places to, like if you own a waterfront, if you have a property that has an ADU, if you have a property that's zoned where you could build an ADU, you can force appreciation on your own property, on your own primary residence. So there's lots of options there. And as long as it's priced right, it's going to rent. There's no question about it. So if there's oversupply, obviously you got to drop the nightly rental rate to get it rented and keep it rented. But I mean, if you look at the numbers, short-term rentals make more money for the homeowner over the course of a year than midterms that make the median amount of money, and then long-terms make the least amount of money over the course of a year for the same property. Okay, and the next few options we're going to talk about are actually disposing of the property or selling the property. Gosh, dispose of just sounds like such a negative word, doesn't it? So you could sell the property as a lease option. We talked about that in a whole nother video. You could sell the property as a wrap. We haven't talked about a wrap yet. What a wrap is say you own a property and you sell this property to a buyer on owner financing. And that buyer then turns around and daisy chains a deed of trust in their own financing, if that makes sense. So say I'm buyer number 1 and you're seller number 1, and I buy this property from you for $200,000 for 6%. And then I turn around and I sell this property to buyer number 2. So now I am buyer number 1, but now I'm seller number 2. And buyer number 2 buys the property for $215,000 for 7%. So what's great about a wrap is that buyer number 2 is the one who's actually going to take title. So they own the property legally. They're the owner of record. They pay you, so you're like their bank, and then you turn around and pay seller number 1 because they're your bank. And where the buyer number 1, seller number 2, my position, makes money is in the difference in terms. So I bought it for $200 at 6%. but I turned around and sold it for 215 at 7%. So that extra 1% point and the extra 15,000 is my buffer. And then I pay, what I owe seller number one. So the cool thing about this is that you're the bank, basically just collect the money and you're kind of the middleman for part of the money, because part of it's going to go back to seller number one, right? But you don't own the property. So like any maintenance or repairs, that's all buyer number two, because they took title. It's their house. So that's what a wrap is. So that's kind of an interesting, really creative, unique way that investors acquire and then sell properties for a profit. You could sell the property as seller financing, just straight traditional seller financing. We did a whole video on that. You could sell a property as a subtail. So what's a subtail? So a subtail is when you acquire a property as a sub two. So we did a whole video on sub two. So you buy a property as sub two, subject to the existing mortgage. So you're just making payments, and then you turn around and sell it, ideally for a profit, right? So it's a subtail because the tail is the retail. So you're selling it on the retail market, but you own it as a sub two. So the cool thing about this is that you probably didn't need to put too much work into it. If you did, that's cool, because you're going to get more money on the retail end anyway. You put it on the open market, you could expose it to, like in my market, there's 40,000 agents in the Northwest MLS all over the state of Washington. And so it gets exposed to a lot more eyeballs and a lot more buyers, and more buyers means more demand. And you know the drill, right? Supply and demand, economics 101. So that is an option to sell it subtail. You could sell it on agreement for sale. So we did a whole video on agreement for sale. It was in the seller financing agreement for sale video. So be sure to check that one out to see what that is all about. Or you could sell it to a wholesaler. So what a wholesaler does is basically, if I'm a wholesaler, I'm going to approach a homeowner, usually in a distressed property situation. So if they acquired the property through probate, like they had a family member pass away and they had this property given to them that maybe isn't in the best condition, or they can't keep it up, or they live like across the country and they just can't maintain it or don't want to maintain it. So a wholesaler would approach, that person, be like, hey, let's talk about what it would look like to sell your property. And then they buy the property from that person, but they be sure to write in their contract and or assign. So like my name, so maybe it would say Cassandra Lopez and or assign, which gives me the right to then turn around and assign this contract to another cash end buyer. So I could close on it. I could buy it if I wanted to, but if I didn't want to actually buy it, and I thought, well, this might be a good one where I could just give to, like, say my client who loves to do the flips, and he takes, 18 months to 2 years to do these flips. Maybe he wants to buy it. So I approach him and say, hey man, I've got this house under contract. I can assign it to you if you want. Here's the assignment fee, and then you can take over the contract and we'll just go from there. And basically where the wholesaler makes money is on that assignment fee. So say I wrap up the property for 180, but I sell it to somebody else, the end user cash buyer, for like 200. So that $20,000 difference is the assignment fee. And that's where wholesalers make their money. It's kind of an intermediary. It's totally legal. It's totally legit. It's actually a really, really good option for homeowners who can't sell their properties in a traditional manner, or maybe they need the money like right now, or maybe they can't afford to pay broker fees, or there's lots of reasons why people might sell their home to a wholesaler instead of putting it on the traditional market. And a lot of the sellers we see do this, they fall into like three categories. One of them is they're in probate and they have no idea how to manage this property, and it's in a kind of a poor condition. They are distressed, so they're like in foreclosure, or maybe they've been delivered a notice of trustee sale, so they're going to be foreclosed upon. Maybe they have a tax lien on the property. Maybe they haven't paid property taxes for a while. Maybe their family situation just is that they have, just abandoned the property and nobody can pay for it and nobody can take care of it. They just need to get rid of it. So a lot of people have those situations, and the wholesaler actually comes in and like kind of saves the day. Like, I think wholesalers get a bad rap sometimes, but I think it's an amazing option that, if you're in one of those scenarios, that you should definitely explore, because it may be just like the easiest thing you did all day, and everybody else, like the wholesaler and the title company and the escrow company and all these people, like did all the work for you, and you didn't have to do anything, and you got to sell your house for, a fee, and you get your money. So it's kind of a cool gig. I don't understand why it's not explored more or like looked upon unfavorably, but that's just me. I'm totally open to all these investment ideas and options and stuff, and I think that's a really good one if you're in one of those scenarios. So if there's any exit strategies that I did not discuss in this video, I want you to write them in the comments below. I would love to see what you guys come up with. I want to engage and reply to all your comments because I do read them all. If you need to reach out to me, this is my contact information, my cell phone and my email. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and tap that little button so you're notified every time I drop a new video. Bye for now.